Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to our Star of Zion featured programming for this evening. This is our first live video of 2022, and tonight's program is geared toward your health and safety against COVID and its variants for the new year. Let's get the facts on how to get vaxxed. My name is Darren Kent, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Star of Zion, which is a monthly newspaper geared toward providing you with the current, relevant, and dependable news while fulfilling our core values of truth, faith, and love. We have a few co-sponsors on tonight. First is Livingstone College. It's a private historically Black institution that is secured by a strong commitment to quality instruction. Through a Christian-based environment suitable for learning, it provides excellent liberal arts and religious education programs for students from all ethnic backgrounds, designed to develop their potential for leadership and serve to a global community. Representatives from Livingstone College have introduced the Star of Zion to our other co-sponsor for tonight's event, the Interfaith Youth Corps. That's the IFYC for others, which is a national nonprofit that equips the next generation of citizens and professionals with the knowledge and skills needed for leadership in a religiously diverse world. We are proud to team with our co-sponsors on tonight to present our special guest. She is none other than Dr. Tracy Gardner. Dr. Gardner graduated from Mount Holyoke College with a bachelor's degree in biological sciences and New York Medical College with a doctor of medicine. Dr. Gardner is the current chief medical officer for the Division of Immigration Services at the Children's Village in New York. She is also the first woman and African American to hold her other current positions as the Director of Community Engagement at New York Medical College and Medical Director for the Greenburgh 11 Union Free School Districts in Dobbs Ferry, New York. She has served as an expert panelist for the United States Senate Finance Committee on the topic of psychotropic medications in child welfare or on Capitol Hill. Invited to be a presenter to the annual meeting of the 9th Judicial District of the New York State Court System, guest panelist for the AM Joy Show, The Joy Read on MSNBC, Black News Channel, and Black Theater United, invited to be a workshop presenter for the Child Welfare League of America's National Conference in Washington, D.C., as well as invited to be presenter and panelist for a discussion on programs and policies to prevent the incarceration of girls of color, just to name a few. And I definitely abbreviated her bio for us tonight. Not only is she all that, but she is also my cousin. And I take special pride in being able to say that. And we thank her so much for making the time on tonight to share with our audience. Towards the conclusion of tonight's event, we will invite some of our student ambassadors to join us and Dr. Gardner and ask some questions. And we also invite you, our audience, to submit your questions via the chat feature wherever you may be watching. For Dr. Gardner, she will answer these questions live. Now, without further ado, let's bring on Dr. Gardner right now. Hey, cousin, how you doing? Wait, unmute yourself. That's okay.
You would think by now, right?
Right. We've been doing this long enough. It's okay.
So I feel like I need a T-shirt that says, I'm still on mute. Like,
right. That's a good T-shirt.
Yeah,
You might have something.
Yeah,
but Dr. Gardner, I'm gonna step into the background and allow you to give us some good information for the new year and hook us up with what we need to know about vaccination, if you would.
You got it. You got it. So thank you again. Thank you, cousin Darren, the editor-in-chief of Star of Zion. I want to thank the Star of Zion for this invitation and this opportunity. And I also want to thank the entire Amy Zion church community throughout Africa and the African diaspora. Thank you again for this opportunity. So I want to start with the science of vaccines, because I think it's important to understand the science of vaccines and how vaccines work. So, most people did not spend a lot of time trying to remember what happened in biology, but there are cells that do this work, right? And so there are lots of cells and macrophages and B cells and lymphocytes, and you'll hear all of these different terms. But the big picture is there are cells that recognize that a virus is abnormal, and there are cells that build antibodies to fight it. So when a vaccine is introduced to the body, it has a piece of that virus, whatever that virus is, whether it's polio, whether it's meningitis, measles, or COVID. It has a piece of that virus. And that piece of virus tells your body, it says, this is foreign, this is something my body's never seen before, and that process begins. So begins the process of cells recognizing that as foreign and starting to do the work to allow your body to create the antibodies that we all have been hearing people talk about. The thing about antibodies is that it takes about 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks or so, and closer to 2 weeks for your body to develop those antibodies to fight against the virus. So during that time, the virus is doing what it wants to do with the cells of your body. And what it does is that it uses those cells in your body to create more of itself, right? To replicate itself. And some of those replications may not look like the original one, right? They mutate into a different variant. Okay, what vaccines do is that we give you a vaccine, we let your body think it's seeing something foreign of that particular virus, right? It creates the antibodies against that virus so that when you are exposed to that particular virus in real life and in real time, your body is already able to recognize it so that the virus cannot do its usual replication and doesn't have that same 2 weeks, because your antibodies will kick in 2 to 3 days. So it doesn't have the same amount of time to do its job, which is why you don't create variants from people who are vaccinated. You create variants from people who are unvaccinated for any particular virus because of the time, but because of the fact that when you're vaccinated, your body has already seen this virus before. So that's what happens with the science of vaccines, right? So it doesn't matter what the actual virus is that we're talking about. That's what happens. So it's a form of pre-protection before you ever get exposed to that particular virus. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of vaccines. And I think this is an important piece specifically for brown and Black people. So vaccine and inoculation science, right? The science of showing your body something before you actually get it, is inoculation science, and ultimately vaccine science as you know it. This was originally started in Africa. And so what happened was when the enslaved Africans came over to the United States, when they were brought over, they shared this science with slave owners. And so in 1723, enslaved African by the name of Onesimus, 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 you can Google that. He, in 1723, he told a man named Cotton Mather about this inoculation science. This is documented because Cotton Mather, it documented it. What happens after that is that Cotton Mather eventually shares this information with a man named Edward Jenner. Edward Jenner is then the person who creates the first inoculation and vaccine for the smallpox after what he saw that was going on with cowpox, that people who got exposed had some protection. For people who got exposed to cowpox, had protection against smallpox. So he used that understanding of that science, and he ended up creating the smallpox, which you all know today. And young people don't know about smallpox because smallpox was eradicated because the majority of the population, it was a mandated vaccine. So the majority of the population was vaccinated. And as a result of that, there is no more smallpox, which is why there is a slew of the population, anyone born somewhere after 1970, in the 1970s, no longer got the smallpox vaccine. And so this is an important piece about understanding vaccines, because there's a lot of misinformation, and we need to understand that vaccine science is a science that comes from Black and brown people. Okay, and of course, they're not going to get the credit for the work that they did, but it is documented that it did come from enslaved Africans, from the science, and we know this, that is something that that African people have always had science and math and architecture and all of those things prior to the Middle Passage and the enslavement of people throughout the diaspora. So understanding that piece and then moving towards, and so what happened is vaccines began created, and you know a bunch of them. So we come to COVID, right? And so there's some history about COVID that you sort of need to understand as well. So in 2004, many of you know that there was SARS, right? That was the coronavirus that was in China, right? 2002 to 2004. So that happened. It ended up primarily being an epidemic. It did not spread as globally, although there were some cases here and there. And then in 2009, there was H1N1, which was commonly known as the swine flu. This was a flu and not a coronavirus. But it was another one where we saw in a small amount of time where you saw something that was an epidemic that could potentially be a pandemic. And then lastly, in 2012 to 2014, 15, well, it lasted to 2015, but it was the MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which was also a coronavirus. So within a span of 10 years, we saw 2 coronaviruses. Now, there are many coronaviruses and they cause common colds, but we were starting to see in short periods of time coronaviruses and not just coronavirus, but epidemics that could potentially be pandemics. So in 2014, under the Obama administration, they decided to create a department to look at potential epidemics that could be pandemics. And they created a booklet that they could share with other presidents that came after them. And in addition to that, they hired a doctor, a PhD, to work on a coronavirus. in 2014. And many of you know her as Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. So Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who was the creator of the coronavirus that then shared that information with Moderna and Pfizer, as you know it, the science of that was started in 2014. So this concept that the coronavirus was created and made within a year is not actually accurate. It took about 6 years in actuality, and it was created and discovered by a Black woman, because that vaccine science is not new. As I stated before, it had been around for 250 years. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to figure out a way to take an antigen, which is a piece of the virus, of any virus, and then understand how to create that particular virus so that the vaccine will work. The trouble often with viruses is that they replicate so quickly, is that you have to find a particular variant to part of the virus that will work regardless of the variant, right? So that is the crux of some of the work. But she did that work, and she did that work for 6 years. The problem is that we had a president at the time who took credit for her work and called it Operation Warp Speed, and made people believe that it was just created within that year, which is problematic because it makes people skeptical, and there was already some politicalization of what was going on. And so as a result, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett's work was put in the background. So what you get, and this is my personal opinion, is that you get, I sort of equate this to like the vaccine to me was really such an important monumental thing. It was like, if you eat steak, and I don't eat steak, but I used to eat steak. But if you eat steak and you get the most expensive, the most succulent, the best steak you could possibly get with butter and chives, this thing is awesome. It is a well-cooked steak and amazing. So just imagine in your mind. Okay. And however, if you present that, if that steak is presented to you by a clown on a garbage can lid, you are not going to want it. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care how good it looks. I don't care how many chives and butter is on it. If it is presented to someone who is not appealing to you on a garbage can lid in a way that is not presented to you in a way that you want it, it doesn't matter. You have to see past all of that to still say, I want it. And I think that was the biggest problem of coronavirus, is its presentation and the politicalization of it. So, but the science and and who made it and why it was made and why this didn't start just now is a super important piece for people to not be making decisions without the proper information. This piece is really important in my mind. So this particular vaccine has a significance, right, to us as brown and Black people, because it was created by someone who looks like us, despite what others have told you. Okay. And that's an important piece for us to know, because we have a history with the healthcare system. As someone who is in it, we have a history of the healthcare system that has been tumultuous at best. Healthcare disparities still exist, and as a result of that, people are often skeptical of any of the healthcare system, and rightfully so. And a lot of people will use that there are disparities. And a lot of people will use the Tuskegee as their example. But even that is not being represented well, because Tuskegee was about withholding withholding treatment, not giving treatment. They were telling them they were giving them treatment, but they were in fact not giving them anything. And they wanted to watch and see what happened to them if they were untreated. So Tuskegee is about an atrocity, but it's not about it's not about giving somebody something that is bad for them. They just didn't give them anything at all. So I think it's part of a broader picture, but I think the details are sometimes missed. The second, one of the second to the last thing I want to say is that my parents who got vaccines, they got a lot more viral load than I got. Science continues to progress. So if you look at polio, for example, polio, when it first started, was given as a live that you used to drink. Many people will remember that. It eventually they eventually made it so you didn't even have to have it live. You can have it inactive and your body will still do the job, right? But they also got more viral load, right? So I got less viral load than my parents because as we learn through science, that it doesn't matter how much you give, your body knows what to do if it sees that foreign thing. So over the generations, in fact, the viral load that's in the antigen, that's in the vaccine, has become less and less and less. And the magnificentness of what Dr. Corbett did was she said, you can have just a piece of the copy, okay, of which is the mRNA, not DNA, which people are out here saying DNA, right? Right, which is the messenger. So you can't copy that. It's a copy of the copy, okay? And it's not even the nucleus or the cell itself, it's actually the spike protein that allows the cell to get in. You give just a small amount, and your body will still do the job. That is magnificent. So this vaccine is even less than what our children got, than my children got, than what I got and our grandparents got. So that's the magnificentness of this, which is often lost because you cannot get this kind of information in snippets on the news, right? And so that is the kind of information that's more in the science realm, which is why I often suggest to people, you cannot Google MD this thing. You can't research this in the library. You can't do any of that. You need to talk to people who are in this world, science and math and medicine, and be able to get this information and understand some of the nuances around some of these conversations. My last thing before I bring in anyone who wants to ask questions is talking about immunity. You hear all of this information about immunity, right? Immunity, right? So what I was talking about from the beginning was your body creating a protective response, right? Antibodies, right? To protective response so that when you get exposed to that particular virus, you have immunity, right? Here's the thing, what we've learned, because we have given over 600 million doses of this thing. So we have learned a lot. And there's not really any medicine or any vaccine where you have given this many doses, you have this much data. We have so much data around this vaccine that really there isn't a good reason at this point to not get it. When I got it December 2020, okay? Listen, I get that people had some concerns back then. There was a lot going on, a lot of politicalization, a lot of misinformation. Listen, I got it. I had doctor friends who were like, I'm gonna watch you, see how it goes, and then I'm gonna get it, right? So I understand that. But I also was a researcher prior to going to medical school. So the science and the medicine I understood. So I was okay. And then some of this background, because I had done a certification at Harvard on how to prevent the next pandemic, lessons from Ebola, which we hadn't even talked about because Ebola also happens in that time frame of Obama. So Obama had a lot of information to say. We need to be real clear and careful that if we don't do the right thing with the next epidemic or virus that comes along, that we're going to be in a full pandemic. So he said, let me hire people, let me create the booklet, let me create a department so that we can do that. Okay, so that's the immunity from the vaccine that I talked about earlier. Here's the thing with this virus, right? So when people get, what we've learned is that when you get COVID, right, the immunity from getting COVID does not last if you don't have a severe disease process. Meaning, if you are not in a hospital, ventilator, like the whole thing, right? If you're not to that severity of illness, right? Over time, you start to lose your immunity relatively quickly. Are there people whose immunity will last longer than that? Of course, there are. There are always exceptions to every rule, and you're not testing everyone. But those who they looked at, including those who were in the original study, is that those who had mild illness, really their immunity, waned over time. Okay, so and with the vaccine, right, we also saw, okay, because we saw some waning of immunity over time. Now this is the reason why, so we're clear, right? Anyone who's not vaccinated, your immunity wanes. We've seen that. That's what happens. Unless you're in a ventilator or you're in a hospital or something like that, you got to know past like 3 months, there's no immunity, right? So you could get it again and act as a host for more variants, right? In the beginning, when they start giving the vaccine, they saw that the immunity was still 97, 96%. The problem was from the vaccine, the problem was there were too many people not vaccinated. So there were too many opportunities for the virus to mutate. And so what happens is the vaccine I got, right? Now its protection starts to slowly wane. So they were a little bit concerned. Initially, it was like 98%, then it was 94%. So the scientists started saying, you know what? Even at 94%, right? If we don't get the unvaccinated to move and it seemed like there was a standstill, right? We've been at 50 to 60% now for a year. There's like a real standstill. It's trickling of increase in vaccinated, but it's not fast enough. So as a result, they said, listen, we got to boost those who and protect those who are willing to take the vaccine and hope that we can still get those who are unvaccinated to get vaccinated before they have poor outcomes. So that was the thought process behind the booster. There were people who said 94% is fine. I think we can wait. Okay. But others said, the more conservative scientists said, no, I think we should boost them because we can boost them back up closer to 100% and to 98% and what have you. But with the Delta variant, they saw some people were going below the 94%, which is why they said, listen, we got to boost as many people as possible. So that's how that's the difference between immunity from getting COVID and getting the vaccine and the thought process behind why they felt the need to be boosted. And so be clear that as long as we are continue down this road and this virus doesn't become a weaker form of itself, we may be having this conversation again. And that is some of the conversations you hear people talking about on the news. And people are like, well, why do they have to be boosted again? Okay, because science matters. And so understanding what's happening underneath all of this rhetoric and all the things that are going on television, it matters because these are the kinds of conversations that scientists and epidemiologists have to continue to have. The people that you see on TV were a lot of the people who dealt with Ebola, and they cannot believe we are here because they learned so much from Ebola and wrote down what needed to be done. They cannot understand why we refuse to not do all of the things that need to be done to get out of this thing. And it's so sad and unfortunate. And this is my very last thing before I open it to questions, is the medications that are out there. You hear about pills. There's two different kinds of medications that you can get now if you have COVID. Okay, the thing about that, and medications are fine, and we want to definitely have medications, right? right? But you don't want, it's not a question of, I'm going to not get the vaccine because I want to get the medication. The problem with the medication is it's not a prophylaxis. You have to have COVID in order to get it. That's monoclonal antibodies. That's the Pfizer pill. That's all of that. Like you got to have COVID. So you're literally playing Russian roulette, right? You're saying, well, I'm going to, roll the dice, see how it goes, how I get COVID, and then I'll be willing to take this medication, which doesn't have as much data against the vaccine that has the ridiculous amount of data. But a lot of people feel that way because of all of the rhetoric around the vaccine. So we don't want people to get ill and become sick. And my last thing, I promise, is that the other piece is that we know now that even mild cases have some chronic consequences, some long-term, like people who get COVID, like the symptoms linger, like even past the quarantine period. They get occasional shortness of breath, they get occasional headaches. So there's and then other people lose their taste and smell for years. And now, I have a friend who hasn't had a taste or smell since 2020. Like this is now, so those are the kinds of things that is part of this larger conversation, and why it's frustrating because realistically, vaccine science is not new. We've been doing this for 250 years. There really is no reason why we're where we are. I'm going to stop there. Thank you. Okay.
My Lord, my Lord. Thank you so much, Dr. Gardner, for that information. I learned so much just now. A vaccine being created by a Black woman. I had no idea about that. And just so many different things that you spoke about just now that were very intriguing. I want to bring our student ambassadors on right now and allow them to be able to pose some questions that they may have based on the great information that you've already given us. Miss Vivara and Mr. Cameron are on tonight with us, and they are student athletes at Livingstone College. We're going to also take some questions from offline. I saw a few of them come through on the chat, but let's start off with ladies first. Ms. Vivara, you have any questions for Dr. Gardner?
Yes, I have two questions. Thank you for all the information. My first question is, we will have to keep getting the vaccine because in Israel, they're starting the 4th dose. And then right now, everybody here is talking about the booster, but do we have to get a 4th one or a 5th one?
This is a great question, by the way. And I sort of alluded to this, right? Because in order to get, people talk about herd immunity, right? Well, we got herd immunity from the smallpox because everybody had to get the vaccine, right? So if everybody, to be honest with you, if everybody got the vaccine when it was first out, we probably wouldn't be here, right? Right. And then we would have booster on booster on booster, right? But that's not where we are, right? We still are so low in the percentage of the population that are not vaccinated that the virus has an opportunity to continue to mutate and to continue to have variants. And I often say to people, I don't want it to go through the whole Greek alphabet, right? So that's what it's doing. That's how they named them, right? We started at Alpha, we're now at Omicron. The next one is Pi and Psi and Rho and things. Like, we don't want that. We don't want to go through the whole Greek alphabet of variants, right? So that is part of the issue. And let me say this to you too. Boosters, mandated boosters, okay, are not new. You yourself, everybody here, has at least 4 tetanus boosters, right? Because you got a vaccine when you were 2 months and 4 months, 6 months. You got one 12 months, 15 months. You got one at 4 years and you got one at 12. Those are boosters and mandated, okay? Right? You got three boosters, mandated boosters of polio. The first was the initial, then you got 3. You got Haemophilus influenza. You got hepatitis B. You have boosters that you've had to get over and over again, right? Because they're protecting you because we haven't reached a point where it's been eradicated, right? But they know that once you get, for example, tetanus, well, let me use polio as an example because polio has been around longer. So now you can have 4 and that's good enough, right? Tetanus, we still got to get boosted. We're still there, right? right? And so 10 years, like if you're tennis, if you go in a hospital and your tennis is 10 years old, what are they going to do? 10 years old, what are they going to do? They're going to boost you if you step on a nail, right? So that's another concept that people are like, oh, well, what's the problem? Why do I get a booster? Like boostering is not new, and it's part of our normal life. So we have to separate. Why do we have a problem with this one, right? Because of the politicalization of this one, right? Because the concepts are not new.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay. I have comments, but I'll hold mine back for a little bit longer. Brother Cameron, do you have a question for?
Yes, I do. So, one of my questions is, with there being so many different variants of the coronavirus, what made the specific variant we're dealing with like become a pandemic? Because I remember you saying that we've dealt with like some epidemics, but what made this one like spread so much?
Okay, another really great question. So we're already into, like, just so you know, we're into like 8 variants of Omicron. I mean of coronavirus, right? So we did Alpha, Beta, Delta, um, Epsilon, whatever comes after that, and then they skipped a couple because they were concerned about the names being either confusing or potentially being problematic. So Xi, which is XI, they skipped over because that is often the name of China, people of Chinese origin. So they didn't want people to then say, "Oh my God, it's the Xi Chinese virus," right? So variant. So they skipped over Xi, and they skipped over new because new would sound like, "Oh my God, it's a new one. I'm so confused." So they skipped over new for that reason, right? So the original one, right, was Alpha. Okay, that was the original one that came from the original variant that came from China, wherever China. We're gonna say it's China, right? Who knows? But let's say it's China for the sake of saying that. So what should happen, right? Whenever you hear, this is what happened in every other president. Obama, Bush, everybody else, okay, right? Go whoever, Reagan, go back in time. This is what happened, okay? They would hear about it, what's happening over there, and they would send doctors over there, okay? So they would send like hundreds, like there's a whole public health core situation, and they send like hundreds, like 500, 600 large and healthcare workers and all these people, right? They do that. In addition, they galvanize about the same number here. Okay. So that, and how that happens is activating the Defense Production Act, right? You heard them talking about activating the Defense Production Act over and over again. They said, why didn't Trump activate the Defense Production Act? I did a talk on February the 3rd of 20, no, yeah, March the 3rd of 2020 to the executives of my company. Okay. And I said, well, I said, this is what's going to happen. I wanted to give them an idea of what was going to happen. I said, they're going to activate the Defense Production Act, and they're going to do this thing. They're going to send a bunch there. They're going to galvanize them here. They're going to learn everything about it. They're going to do like all the things that are in the book that Obama put together. And that's going to prevent it from spreading. Okay. That never happened. And because that never happened, right? And you have history to tell you when you put the things in place and you do them, it doesn't happen, because they did that for Ebola, right? They did that for Ebola, and there was maybe 10 cases in the United States, and there were people who had been working in Africa and came over, and maybe 1 or 2 deaths, and that was it. As quickly as it came, it went because the wall was in place, right? And so it couldn't happen. All of that did not happen. So the viruses people were allowed to move around. There was some racism. It was like, okay, well, you can travel here, but you can't travel here. Like, you shouldn't be able to travel anywhere. Like, everybody should be on the same. That's the whole, remember, we removed ourselves from the World Health Organization, which would have been sort of like the hub, right, for all of the countries to communicate and to be in line with each other. So all of these things that would normally happen and normally be in place did not happen under the prior administration. And to the day he left, he never activated the Defense Production Act. The things that are happening now, because now you're Monday morning quarterbacking, right? The things you're seeing now are products of Biden activating the Defense Production Act, but we're a year out, right? So it's not going to have the same effect. But like his ability to give to send out home kits, that's part of the Defense Production Act. Our ability to give out masks, the ability, all of those things are part of that. But it's Johnny come lately in a lot of ways because the horse has left the barn. And to Vivera's point, when the question that she asked is that right? It's like it's already like like why Israel has to do it because we were not acting as a global collective. Right? We didn't do the thing that we know worked time and time again. Right? And so as a result of that, I mean, people were being secretive. We fighting over stuff. No, we're in a pandemic. We needed to do the thing. And that comes from not having the right leadership. When you do not have the right leadership, and it doesn't matter where you are, whether it is a country, whether it is a organization, whether it is this company, without the right leadership, you will see the consequences of that. And unfortunately for many, for 800,000 people, the consequences of that was death.
And just like we said, science matters earlier, leadership matters, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just as much. We have some amazing questions in our chat, amazing comments that have been coming across our chat. They've been filling in since you've been talking. I see one individual, Miss Sandy Comer. In my experience, the most resistant to the vaccine are young Black males in their 20s and 30s. How do we convince these individuals of the benefit and need to get vaccinated?
I think great question, and because I work at Children's Village, which is basically young Black males, you have to meet them where they are. You have to meet people where they are. Like you can't. Like I often ask people individually. What is your barrier? Like help me understand where you are, right? So that we can have a dialogue. And sometimes it doesn't result. Sometimes the conversation is, you still have a lot to think about, right? Or, because I've had people say that I think God will heal me. And so I don't have to get the vaccine. And that, and so what do I believe that God will heal me. And so I absolutely believe God can heal you from coronavirus, right? And God has healed many people from coronavirus. So that is not a question, okay? But God is also able to create healers. He is omnipotent. He is able to create healers. And he's also able to create people who can create science and vaccines, right? So, right. My whole thing is that he can't be a one-trick pony God, okay? You can't say that he can only heal, but he can't do these other things. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I often say you have some things to think about who God really is. And is that your fear, right? Because the truth is that you have to trust him in all things.
All things, that's right.
Right? And so those conversations don't always end in, okay, I'm gonna go get the vaccine tomorrow. That's a question. That ends in pondering, right? But you have to meet, right? You have to meet people where they are, right? And so, and you have to take into consideration people's trauma. Right? Because everybody's different. So people have trauma, people have issues, people have all kinds of things going on, right? So, I often say for 20 and 30 years, I literally meet them where they are and find out what the issue is. I think they're swirling in the social media abyss, okay? And as a result, that's where they're getting their information, and they're not getting it from someone like me. And so, or someone they can trust, whether it's a pediatrician or whatever, pediatricians, we give more vaccines than anybody. Nobody gives more vaccines. Nobody gives more vaccines than us. Nobody knows more vaccines than us. That's not a thing. So, there has to be somebody they trust. in New York, where I am, I got to be honest with you, how I got a lot of them is they wanted to go out.
Mhm.
Like they wanted to go to Madison Square Garden. Like they wanted to go to games. They wanted to do things. Like they wanted to, and you can't go anywhere in New York if you're not vaccinated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so that was, they held the line till
Mhm.
they couldn't go to the Knick game. And they
Mhm.
were Knicks. You know what I mean? And then, and then they were like, oh, Dr. Gardner, can I get that vaccine? you know, and so, sometimes you got to meet people where they are.
Mhm.
You got to help them understand where they are, help them demystify some of this stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what you do.
Let me fast track this. I know we got to go shortly. This has been powerful, inspirational. I think a lot of people are being educated, as well as posing some good questions and making people think through it a little bit more. And we know we have different perspectives on the chat. I do see all the perspectives, and they all are coming up, and that's fine. Keep putting it in the chat. We embrace it. We want everybody to feel comfortable with being able to give their opinions. As long as we're not disrespectful and just able to hear multiple sides of the story, we're very fine. So let me shoot over to Vivara one more time. Actually, let's do like rapid fire real quick. Get 2 questions out at once. So ask your next question, Vivara, and then one more from Cameron, and then I might get one more from the chat if I can find one of those. So Vivara, let's go, please.
If a virus has more variants, does that mean that it gets stronger or weaker?
We don't know, actually, right? It's hard to know that. So my hope and prayer is that the next one, because we don't have enough people vaccinated, so there will be another one, right? So my hope and prayer, and I pray, is that this virus, that Omicron, begets a weaker virus. Right?
Wow.
That's ultimately what happened with the 1918 flu, is that ultimately the virus beget a more weakened virus, and that virus just caused the cold, and then that was it. Right? This coronavirus is very different, though. It is a very different virus that really likes multiple organ systems. We saw a 14% increase in diabetes over the population.
Wow.
It likes your vasculature. Like I often, it's like people think when you lose your taste or smell that's a taste bud thing. That's not a taste bud thing. That's a cranial nerve thing. You're having inflammation in your brain. It's a cranial nerve problem.
Wow.
That's why it lingers. It's causing inflammation in the cranial nerve that innervates your taste buds. It is not your taste buds. So that is a real significant problem. So people don't understand what coronavirus is doing, because if they did, they would want no part of it. Okay, because it is a terrible virus. Do you know what I mean? And so, I don't know. I like I said, I hope and pray that it is that it is a weakened one, because currently, with all the technology we have technology, we have ventilators, we have all this technology. We have more deaths from coronavirus, okay, than they did from the 1918 flu.
With
With
all
none of that.
Less technology, right? Nothing.
Okay,
Nothing.
right, exactly. We have, if you add the World War I, World War II, and the Korean War together, you end up with 329,000 American deaths. We are over 800,000 American deaths. Be clear, this is a war.
Oh my God.
Okay.
War.
All right. So we are in, I think people are not taking this thing seriously. And listen, I understand the fear. Right? Because there's been a lot of information being thrown at people. So I tell people, I say, I get it. Like I get the fear. I totally get that. But you can't swirl in the abyss of social media. I mean, I saw what's the things, like an app or whatever, where you could put on a scrubs and a stethoscope. and then create a TikTok where you look like you're a doctor. Like, what
Doctor.
the heck? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, and so,
Not to be played with at all.
I beg people, like, back away from the computer. Like, it's just, it's really, it is the swamp.
Yeah, I mean, Dr.
On
Tracy,
both sides.
in full transparency, you've helped my family in totality, coach them through this entire pandemic. You've been more than gracious with giving information, and you're qualified to speak on it. But as you said so many different times, we are going to the wrong people. We're getting advices from those people that probably shouldn't be given any advice in the area, and it's really working against us at this point. And social media, I mean, it works amazing in some ways, but I don't know how good it's doing when it comes to the misappropriation of facts out there on the virus. It could be working against us. You know?
It's working against us. And I always tell people, I say, ultimately, no matter what I say, it's a personal choice.
That's
okay.
Right.
And I say this too, right? Because I've heard people say, I can only give you what I have, right? What I know and what I have, right? Based on science and medicine. How you receive that, right, is how you receive that, and how I hope God allows you to receive that, and whatever that looks like for you, right? And so at the end of the day, it's your personal choice.
It's just how we introduce Christ to people, right? Isn't it the same way?
It's the same
make
way.
you become a believer.
That's it. I can only give you the information. That's it. But at the end of the day, it's a personal choice.
That's
right. I only come from a place of being in this world of health and seeing what it's doing. And I care for people deeply, and it saddens me that we are here.
That's amazing. Cameron, one quick question, and I think that might be it.
They haven't started yet, Darren, so I can hear them in the background.
Oh, okay, you got a little bit more time. All right. Let's see if we get one from off of the, maybe one or two off the internet after Cameron.
Okay, so my question is, there's like so many viruses, but like I feel like this is like the first one where it's like people can just have like a common cold, and then so many people can just die. Like, what makes this one impact like different individuals so differently?
And Cameron, great question. These are great. I always feel like these are great questions, though. I'll be honest with you, I love questions on coronavirus. I think, let me just say that before I answer your question, because there's so much bad information, right? So, or just not even bad information, but just unclear information, because you can't get it in a snippet, right? So here's the thing, Cameron. The flu does exactly the same thing. The other 18 coronaviruses do remember, this is COVID-19, right? There's other coronaviruses. There's other viruses. Adenovirus is a virus that can cause you to have a cold, a runny nose, conjunctivitis, and it can cause you to have brain inflammation, right? So again, how this particular virus functions is very much like any other virus. The flu, for the flu, for example, we have about 12,000 deaths, or worldwide. We have about 12,000 deaths a year of the flu, right? It's a virus. Some people just get a cold, they get over it, that's it, and boom, they're done, right? And others die, right? The problem with this one is that we allowed it to run rampant. Okay, that's what happened. I mean, we knew what it was, we saw what it was, and we lied to people. Not me, but we as a country, we lied to people, for branding or for whatever, and we just did not do the right thing. We just didn't. And so, and it wasn't just us, right? Because if you look at England, they didn't do the right thing. You look at China, they didn't do the right thing. You look at all these other places. There's so many people, like it was like a perfect storm of terribleness. Okay, right? Okay, a bunch of bad people making bad decisions. And I watched in horror. And I'm like, just do the thing you need to do. And it was like, nope, I'm just not going to do it. And even after they watched people die, and again, if you hear anything on social media, okay, if you are not a scientist, I tell people, if you are not a scientist or in medicine, okay, you should not be making any decisions about this without talking to somebody who's actually in that field. Okay? You would never go in a court where your life was in danger, where you were about to be committed to go to jail for the rest of your life, okay, and go on social media and try to figure that thing out. Okay? You would want a lawyer. It makes no sense to me why people, okay, think they can go online, read, okay, an article, right, and do all of that, and then say, I understand this. Like, I that piece, like, I don't understand. Even I took a class at Harvard, like, and I literally was a researcher, okay, because I felt like even as a scientist and as a person and as a physician, I still needed to learn, but I had the foundation. I know the difference between an antigen and an antibody. I know the difference between what a macrophage does and a lymphocyte does. I know those things. How can you make like these kinds of decisions without having that information? And so I just think that and I get it. I get people, like, I get all the time. I've done my research, and I get that. Again, personal choice. It's your personal choice. I just am brought here to give you information from someone who has that information.
That's it. Dr. Gardner, this is coming to an end. We're going to take one more question from offline. It's from Dr. Dartavia Parrish, and I think this is a good conclusion to this entire event. I'm going to post it on the screen shortly. I want to thank you so much for your time on tonight. You are a wealth of knowledge. I think if it's okay, and if you would like to, if you want to give out any contact information or tell people how to get in touch with you with any questions that they might have in the future, feel free to do so. If not, I just put you on the spot. You don't have to. But I'm looking at the chat. People are very engaged. I'm sure they're going to go back and look at this over and over again in the future. And we're just a blessing to the body and to the kingdom in general. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank
I'll
you.
give you can always contact me in this public anyway. You can contact me at tgardner@childrensvillage.org. Children's Village has an S in between it. It's totally fine, because if you went to Children's Village, my picture's there and my stuff. So that's fine. Again, no judgment. I really believe you meet people where they are. And I just impart the information. Whatever you decide to do is your choice.
That's right.
That it is your choice. We make choices about a lot of things. This is just one of them. Okay. But I always hope that people make it, whatever choice they're making in life, that they make it with all the necessary information before they make it.
That's it.
That's it. And so, and like I said, there's no judgment. I've heard it all. There is nothing that you can say I haven't heard. Not a one thing. I've been doing panels and presentations for 2 years. There's nothing I haven't heard. And so, and again, no judgment wherever you are is okay. But the facts are the facts. We're going to continue everybody asks about herd immunity. We can't really get here like this. I really thought that everybody in the beginning, I thought if enough of us got vaccination. I used to tell people in my original talks, I would say everybody doesn't have to get the vaccine. That was my original talk. I say everybody doesn't have to get it. We just got to get enough of us to get it so that the rest of you would be protected, right? Because this is about my brother's keeper and my sister's keeper, right? I took the vaccine not for me, okay? I took it for my children and my husband and my family. I took it for them because I was fearful that if something happened to me and I got COVID, how would that impact them, right? And my family. So even when all of the information wasn't there. So I just, listen, it is how you feel is how you feel, right? But feelings and knowledge are not the same thing.
That's it. Listen,
but what was her question?
I know, and look, this is what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this. there's so many questions, and there's so many good ones that we have in the chat. First of all, your information is on the screen right now. Dr. Parrish, who has the question for you, left that up there. If you need to contact Dr. Gardner, that's her email address. Feel free to do so. Now, I'm gonna riddle off 3 questions. They're
Okay,
short
I'll try to be
questions.
brief. I'm not always brief.
Right.
And the Tarvia Parish is my sorority sister. I see by her picture.
Yes, she is. I need the link later on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so here they go.
Okay,
They're quick questions. Maybe you can give like a group summary answer. But I'm gonna read all 3 of them back to back. And this goes back to the beginning of your conversation. What is the best way? Here we go. And this is Life of Bussy B. What is the best way to prevent COVID if you were scared to get the vaccine? Well, wait, don't answer that. Kind of remember that.
Okay,
if you can. And then will the vaccine be able to stop the spread of all the variants, or is it just this one and then we got to keep taking different vaccines? And then the last question, and I know this was a lot, and I'll run through them again, but where is that question, Dr. Parrish? The chat is jumping, so I'm trying to find it. All right, answer those 2. Oh, here we go. There's the last one. Why should we believe we're doing the right thing now? And this was going to be my last summary conclusion question to you. Are we going in the right direction? What makes us believe everything we hear now is the right direction, or do you feel it's not? So I kind of leave all of that. I can go back and run through them again if you need me to. Do you?
Okay, so let me start with hers first because it's right there. Okay. The reason why we know that is because when we look at those who are in the hospital and those who are dying, there's still a majority of the unvaccinated. 97% of all those who die are unvaccinated. That's just what it is. I can't make that different. It's just what it is. If you work in a hospital, if you talk to people in a hospital, they'll tell you their wards are filled with unvaccinated folks. And they're dying of all ages. A nurse that I work with told me she was like an unvaccinated 32-year-old with no medical problems died. So, right. So the answer to that question is we know that we're doing the right thing because not only the data suggests that, but anecdotally we see that, right? And so even with Omicron, people who are vaccinated, they got sick. They know who they got because they never said the vaccine would cause you to not get COVID. It said it would prevent death and hospitalizations. Right. That's what the study was trying to prove, to prevent death and hospitalization. And it has proven that. Right. So if you are still fearful of getting the vaccine, I would say, again, speak to someone. These are ongoing conversations. I've had conversations with tons of people for 6 months to a year before they got there. And then they would call me and be like, and then some people haven't gotten there yet. And that's okay too. But when people who get there, they can't wait to call me and show me their card and be like, I did it, Dr. Gardner. And the whole weight's taken off, whatever. So, if you're still fearful, and I appreciate your honesty for the person who asked that question, because that's real. I would say then you have to do everything you can to protect yourself and your family. That includes you really got to wear a mask, right? All the time, right? Because there are situations where if everyone is vaccinated, Omicron's not one of them. I mean, people still got sick with it. So right, you can still get sick, but you don't want to die. But you don't want to, since the majority of those who get to severe illness are unvaccinated, you got to take the extra precautions, right? You might have to minimize going to restaurants, even though restaurants are places, and in New York, you can't really go without vaccination, but those places where you can be out, in states where you can be out, even if you're unvaccinated, that might be something you don't want to do because everybody in there is not wearing a mask, right? Because they have to eat. Right. So that might not be something you want to do. And then you want to, with any other medical problems you have, you want to make sure that you take care of those medical problems, right? You still want to maintain your health because COVID is not the only thing out there. So we didn't stop having other things, right? So you still have to think about health and well-being. Okay, we can't get so sucked into COVID that we forget that we are a whole person that has can get other things. So your health and well-being, what you eat, how you exercise, all of those things still matter. So you still have to do that. And lastly, we knew that this is why I said in the beginning it was just recommendations, because because initially, even though we were powering through the variants, even though you may not have realized that, right? When we were powering through the variants, those who were vaccinated, it was still holding up. They were still at 97, 98% protection, right? They were actually even protected from getting COVID, actually, right? So they weren't even getting COVID, right? But over time, what happens is the virus uses your cells, it uses the person's cells as a machine to create replications of itself. And that's how the variants happen, right? And it takes your body too long to build antibodies. So by the time it's finished, it's a new variant, right? And so that's the problem. Same thing was true with HIV, by the way, which is why it took us so long to create medications and why we still don't have a vaccine. It's the same concept. But for HIV, it was even worse, because by the time you built up antibodies against HIV, the actual virus that your body first saw is gone. Like it doesn't even exist anymore. It's like a whole new virus. It replicated into something completely different that your body can't fight against. And that's what was the problem with HIV. So, the science is the science, right? It doesn't matter what the virus is. The science remains the same on how your body works. So the answer to the not very short answer to that question is, it will depend on whether the virus itself becomes a weakened virus, right? And it will depend on the number of people who get vaccinated.
Well, Dr. Gardner, it looks like we're going to have a part 2 on this and talk some more with a professional like you, of your caliber. Listen, thank you so much once again. Thank you to our student ambassadors. Didn't they have great questions? Weren't they amazing?
Yes, they were amazing.
They were absolutely amazing. And I asked them, I was like, have y'all done this before? Y'all been on camera? And they're like, no, we usually stay in the background. We just listening. And they did amazing, had perfect questions, and really brought that perspective, which is exactly what we needed to hear on today. So thank you all very much. We are going to sign off now. Again, Dr. Gardner, you've been such a blessing. The wealth of information that you've given has been priceless. And we love you and thank you. And you open invitation to things that happen in the Star of Zion in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye. Thank you so much to everybody else for joining us on tonight, this evening. It's been phenomenal discussion that we've had. The chat is still there, and jump in. This post will stay up for you to go back and reference and share with other people. Please share this post, share the Star of Zion. We're going to be getting more content, doing more lives like this in the future. Once a month, we're going to be featuring our bishops, and once a month, we're committed to getting a health professional to come on to talk to our denomination and to the entire world from the Star of Zion perspective, to speak about things that are happening across our globe, to make sure that we are informed about the decisions that we make with the love of Christ. Thank you again for joining us on tonight, and we appreciate everything that you have done thus far. Stop by starofzion.org and get your digital copy today, or you can sign up for the print version as well. We got great content, relevant information that's up there each and every month. Deadlines to submit news, and we do want your news for the Star of Zion, is the 15th of the month for every single month. So news at starofzion.org is how you submit that. It comes across to our desk, and then we're able to make decisions on whether it's included in the publication for the following month. So the 15th of this month, January 15th, was what we were working more on for the February issue. So it works like that moving forward. And we do want your news. So if you want to submit anything from pretty much any topic, it'll come across our desk for selection to be put into the paper and to be produced and showcased online. Thank you so much again for joining us on this evening, and we will see you on next week. We will have, I guess it's this week, I'm sorry to say that, we will have our bishop Monroe featured and talk about the quadrennial theme for the AME Zion Church. It will be on Thursday, the 27th. And you can look out for more information about that across the Star of Zion networks. And he will be dissecting everything that we are doing for the quadrennial theme as we kick off the new year. Have a blessed and safe rest of your evening, and stay safe. Now that we've heard all this good information, make sure you stay safe out there. God bless you all.